Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the 12th and final round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup, which took place just over there in Hoogerheide, and with me here to discuss it is Issam.
Just over here in The Hague, not in Hoogerheide, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Just a little bit somewhere over there that way, but we will be on site both for the first time this season in Huls for the World Championships next week, but today the final race before that, the World Cup in Hoogerheide. First, to shortly reflect a little bit on yesterday's podcast episode. I feel that while we did discuss everything in the context of the World Championships and we elaborated a bit on that at the end, I would still like to kind of shortly come back on a little like the dynamic of this podcast, because we are both here in the Netherlands and we try to kind of elaborate on the Dutch perspective and how the media is reflecting to it. And that's also why yesterday we spent so much time talking about Lucinda Brandt, because the main headlines here afterwards were, is Lucinda Brandt flamed out? Is it over for her? What does this mean for the World Championships? And we focused primarily on that, but perhaps we should have first talked about Pieterse and then flown into that narrative. But that's where that came from in yesterday's episode. Today, I don't think there's really anything like that to really put us off, because in the men's elite race, well, it was not really a race. It was a training for Van der Poel. It was his playground here. 9 wins in Hoogerheide is what he put at his total today. 51 World Cup wins, the lone record holder. I don't think anybody doubted that he would become that this morning. He took it easy in the first lap or so, and then took the front, quickly broke clear. For second place, yeah, they quickly realized Van der Poel, it's too much, the course is super fast, nobody really eager to do anything, not many moves really. Some minor moves, but also a lot of waiting, especially with 3 laps to go. The pace was so low, a big group behind, some 16 riders in contention for second place, but it were mainly the same names up front there, the same ones as yesterday: Van der Putte, Nijs and Del Grosso. Came down to a sprint. Nijs hesitated coming on to the start-finish straight in the final lap. There was a headwind. He didn't want to go all out. He launched still somewhat early. Del Grosso overruled him. He stopped pedaling and then also got pippled on the line by Niels van der Putte. Nijs making some gestures about what an idiot he is for losing that sprint, but that was so far behind Van der Poel. He won by a minute and a half or something like that. It was just another phenomenal display here in the race. GP Adrie van der Poel. There's some talk GP Sven Nijs at some point is going to be renamed. This here will at some point probably also be renamed GP Mathieu van der Poel. They were talking about that at the last World Championships here. And when you see Van der Poel just absolutely dominate and tarnish the opposition today, it's easy to see why. And that's kind of all I have to say about it. Issam, it was a phenomenal display.
We were discussing midway through the race when we were going to record, and I said we can record right now, because we got to be honest. When you see Van der Poel launch that attack, you already know the race is over. And I think the thing that I was interested in the most in terms of his performance was that he really kept on pushing in a sense, and he used every opportunity to increase the gap to the rest. That was maybe with a purpose, maybe not, but he was pushing, and I think that was in a sense good to see. But it also kind of showed that it is not really close between him and the rest, and we knew that. It's not something new. But I guess again today it was it was shown quite painfully in a sense that this is the case. And then I'm wondering if Van der Poel wasn't racing today, if the racing would have been a little bit different, because maybe now you have like this second place syndrome of everybody there sitting and thinking, well, it's maybe too early to go now, and I don't want to lose out on second place, and there are only 2 podium spots left. Well, if you're racing for the win, you might risk it a little bit more. And I think that was kind of what we saw today. And it was, you always had this feeling that it would end up with the same protagonists that we saw in Maasmechelen, Nijs, Van der Putte and Del Grosso. And that was kind of where it was heading to. Only I was thinking that Nijs would finish on the podium. And to be honest, I think that he can really have a hard look at himself. Just, when you come out of that corner there on the final straight, you just have to push from, if you're leading, you just have to push from the corner. I've seen it a couple of times. It works. You can do it. And even if you lose out there on the sprint, then in the end, it's better than what Nijs was doing now, because he made that first mistake, I guess, of hesitating. Then he gets beaten by Del Grosso, who rode a great sprint, by the way. And then you just stop pedaling, and there was Van de Putte, who was coming in to snatch third place, and it's the same result for the top four as we saw in Maasmechelen, but I think it doesn't tell you the entire story in a sense, because I think that Van de Putte today was riding very well, but he was not going to be on the podium normally if Nice did what he had to do. But I think nevertheless, we just saw the strongest riders in the sense of the moment, the riders of the moment. We have to wait and see if that will also carry on into the World Championships in Hulst, but arguably I think one of the... Well, I don't know if I can say that, but maybe if on the men's side for sure, it was one of the worst races that I was watching this season, I think. I mean, I don't know how you think about it, but I had no sleep, but I really felt genuinely like sleeping was maybe a better thing than watching the race.
Well, I wouldn't put it like that, but it was not a super thrilling race, mainly because for second place there was not that much happening. There were a few minor moves, but it was mainly just the last part of the course with the barriers and then the small two dips and the big drop, stairs, off camber. That just naturally stretches it out, but afterwards every lap it just came back together and the group got bigger instead of smaller. So do I think that it would have been different if Van der Poel wasn't here? Maybe, but I will also say, Issam, remember back to the World Championships here with Van der Poel and Van Aert? Behind there was also a massive peloton for third place. Iserbyt and Van Haar broke clear of that back then, but that group was massive. Marek Konwa was hanging in there in 18th place. Like, it's also the nature of this course, and to be honest, I'm a bit bored with this course. It's a nice course in its simplicity, but we've had this course for 10, 11 editions now. We've had a World Championship here, the next World Championships are coming up, and it's still the same. And I really hope that next year they totally redo the course and figure out a new angle to it, because I've seen this recipe and I've seen it in these conditions so often that I've seen the race scenarios play out. And then maybe it also doesn't help that for all these years I've seen 5 races here, like juniors, under 23 and elites. Then it quite quickly becomes quite repetitive for me here, at least. I don't think that it's bad to have a course like this. It's a featureless course. It's fast. It can be a bit muddier, but it's okay to have courses like that. I would just like to see, because if you change the course around a little bit, you can still have a featureless course, but then maybe you can change at least the look and feel and the way that the tactical games are played. I feel like we've seen this many times here already. So that much for the course, and if it would have been different. For Nice, yeah, that was silly. If he sprints from the bottom, he probably finishes third, which is still better than where he comes now. If he sprints until the line, he also finishes third, which he didn't do. I don't really understand it. And it kind of adds to this weird season of Thibaut Nice. He had a good season. He had really good moments, quite some highs. I mean, Belgian Championship win. Another race that comes to mind is his start on the Koppenberg. His performance in Namur was quite good, but Namur was also kind of telling. He had those good moments, but he also still had a lot of mistakes, both technically, but also mentally. Like, yesterday was part of it was mentally, he said afterwards. Today was also a mental thing. I will say that today it was riding apparently with a little bit of a knee injury. I wouldn't call it injury, that's too dramatic, but some knee pain. You might think when I'm going to say this that this is the ultimate Class 1 torn out move, but during the warm-up, his trainer blocked and he was doing a sprint and all of a sudden the pedals blocked and he hurt his knee a little bit in there. But I actually saw this happen with my eyes, because just as I was walking onto the parking, this unfolded in front of me. So it's not a Class 1 torn out excuse coming up here. It could have influenced him a little bit also in that sprint, but still, regardless of the power or whatever, it's just something that Thibaut Nice still needs to work on. He needs to become a even more mature rider. He needs to be able to deliver, and he this season too often has not been able to deliver due to technical or mental shortcomings or technical mistakes at moments that he shouldn't be making them.
As today, you have to be clinical. If you want to lead out, you have to some sort of a plan. I don't know if he was really thinking about that scenario of leading their last corner or whatever, but it was I think up until that point, he didn't do much wrong. You could maybe question the initiative that he had to take, but overall, it wasn't all that much. And as we were saying, there wasn't, they were trying some stuff and they were trying to break it up a little bit, but every time the group, became bigger and bigger over the course of the race, and especially in those, you know, just before, the penultimate lap, it was really just that build up towards the final lap, and that's fine because at that point you have to make a decision, and it would be silly to go for an attack there and finish, maybe even outside the top 10 because that risk was really there. It was so tight there up front that you might, if you make a mistake or you have a mishap, you might end up outside of the top 10. So it was risky. There was something to play for, and yeah, I think about Nice. He should think about it for a little bit, but just forget about this race, to be honest, because I think that he today and also in Maasmechelen showed that he has good. The form is good, and the legs are there. And if he is anticipating a sort of compensation from the training that he had in the last 2 weeks, who knows what that will mean for Hulst? Because I think that if he gets that edge, that could maybe be enough for maybe second place. So sure, he will look at this race and be like, this was a total f up in a sense, but that is how it goes, and you gotta learn from these races, and sometimes you need a couple of these mishaps to then learn from and get better. Other riders tend to fall into the same trap in a sense, but I think that Nice is a rider that can learn from it and that can bounce back from these races, and it's not the end of the world for him for sure, because I think, as you said, there were definitely a lot of highs in this season as well. He made the progression that some were anticipating, that were some were hoping for. He sure did not deliver in some areas, but I think that he is also a rider that still can grow into that role. I mean, he is definitely now in a phase of his career where the progression will not be as high and as big as it already was, but he will find areas where he can improve on, and I definitely think that he has it in him to become that and to be the one of the better cyclocross riders, and he already is. He already is at this point. There's just one guy that is just a whole lot better, and that's Van der Poel, and that's what we saw today again.
Yeah, I think that's enough about Thibaut Nys. I mean, he can still improve, and maybe expectations were also too high, but let's wait for the final conclusions on his season next week. If he finishes second, then everyone is like, yeah, okay, he performed pretty much when he needed to. Nobody will remember about those European Championships against Toonaars except we, because that was a phenomenal race. For me, still race of the season, but yeah, it's where we are. So there's still time, and you're measured at that level by the championships and how they go. And he has a jersey, and for the rest, yeah, I think for Del Grosso and Nieuwenhuis, Van de Putte, not really much to say that we didn't already say yesterday. So Del Grosso, again, strong race, very calculated, doesn't really spike his watts. You could see that Thibaut Nys tried to force something at the moment Van der Poel went. Del Grosso then quickly sets into his own pace, but Nys always tries to use that moment to force a separation. Didn't work today. In other races it has worked. So you can really see, like, for instance, that was also the case in Hofstade. He kind of cooked himself trying to follow Van der Poel in that race, but he definitely tried to then at least force like a split at that point. And Del Grosso then always stays calm and lets Nys have his 5 moments of fame and then pulls him back in, which is again what we saw today, very calculated riding style by him, and he had something left in the tank. He stayed cool again. Turning second here is probably for the best. Nys, yeah, he was in the lead a long time, and Del Grosso in that sense kind of, I wouldn't say got it gifted to him because he worked hard for it, but he was in the more favorable position due to his own riding style. And Van der Putte, again, another strong finish. We discussed him at length yesterday. It's really good the way that he's performing right now after such a long season, and he did do some things differently from last year, but he is, I think, the rider with the most race starts. And then to be in this form now, so short before the World Championships, is promising. Is it a week too early? Who knows? Time will tell, but it certainly was another good day for him and a good day for Alpecin. Christoph Roodhooft with another podium sweep. So he can be happy heading towards the World Championships, because on the women's side, it's also been quite phenomenal for his team. If we look at the entire top 10, Issam, I think there's two riders that stand out to briefly discuss. Van der Poel, De Grosso, Van der Putten, Nijs and Aerts was your top 5. Felipe Ortsen 6th ahead of Joris Nieuwenhuis, then Gerben Kuipers, Filippo Fontana and Jente Michels. And I think Toon Aerts today is worth mentioning. 5th place is a good result for him. There have been some signs of improvement recently, but it's still been up and down since that European title. So today he definitely looked good on a course that doesn't really suit him that much in these conditions.
He was almost riding in the way of Van der Putten, by the way, Toon Aerts. But yeah, I think, to be honest, that today was a race in which if you had a decent day, you could get yourself into the race by positioning yourself well, and that obviously grants you an opportunity. I don't know if some of the results reflect the current form, but it is definitely a positive for him, and he was up there, he was aggressive, and he tried to make the moves. He was positioning himself quite aggressively up front, which is in a sense a benefit, especially if you are a rider that you have to do that in a sense to position yourself well. It costs you a little less energy. It will cost you some energy, but in the long run, it will definitely be something that you benefit from. And I think that Aerts was one of those riders that benefited from his positioning overall. He had a good day overall as well. So I think that was a positive day for Aerts, and I really hope that he would be in championship form come Hills. But it's again, that last race in Maasmechelen wasn't amazing, so I just don't know if this is now.
Puncture also there, huh?
Yeah, and the puncture for sure was there, but I don't know if I can get a if this is now going to be enough for me now to say, okay, in Hulst he's gonna be there, because he had a season that was some ups, some downs, but not that many ups. It would be great, and you said it as well, if you are able to get a result at a championship, no one will really talk about what you did in the season overall. So it is definitely.
And he already has a jersey.
And he
for
already
that matter,
has a.
so his season is already a success.
Exactly. So I think that imagine if he was going to be able to get on the podium here at Hulst, and he already has the European title. Who are we to then try and discredit that season that he had, which wasn't the greatest of seasons if you forget about the championships. So he could really make a season even better than it already is in a sense. And who knows? But today was good. Today was positive from Aerts. I definitely saw the positives. For the Putte, almost had his issues with him, but he was able to negotiate that rather well there on the final lap. To be honest, from the Putte, I thought at one point that he lost his final lap magic, but he got through there again. So it was that was
still got it.
He still got it. So yeah, final lap was fun. I mean, I was talking about sleeping, but the final lap definitely was a was a great awakening, and was nice to see, and was entertaining, and made somewhat up for the dull race that we had halfway through.
And at that point, there's some like, if you win the Europeans and medal worlds, nobody cares about those other races. But I agree that I don't necessarily see that Aerts is at this moment all of a sudden a real podium contender. He's in that shell of riders behind, but due to the current lay of the land with absences, injuries, Viseur apparently good to race. Concussion protocol, I guess, doesn't exist anymore the week before the World Championships. But if you look at it that way, there are possibilities there for a good result. It's wide open behind riders like Orts, Nieuwenhuis with a knee injury, Mason showing some form yesterday. There's definitely some potential for interesting surprises there. And then in that, I would like to again point out Filippo Fontana is having a tremendous season, and the 9th place today really adds to that. Another good result in the World Cup for him. Let's move to the women's side then, because that certainly was not a race to fall and sleep during, because it was action, and where there was a huge peloton for 2nd and 3rd in the men's race that was there for the win on the women's race. It was a big pack, 15, 16 riders for the first lap, and Foucounet setting the pace, kind of drifting and trying to force a shift at the front of the race, but never really able to knock a lot of riders out of contention. It remained close, riders coming back from groups behind, bridging across. At some point, Victoria Gladanova made her way into the top 3. So there was a lot of stuff going on, but ultimately the race was decided kind of in the final 2.5, 3-ish laps. With 3 laps to go, the pace went up Pieterse started really making her mark and leaving her stamp on the race. The pace went up, and as a result, Casasola crashed coming onto the tarmac. Ribeirol went down, and from then we had first 3 leaders, Pieterse with Backstedt and Foucounet. Later, Zemanova swapped positions with Backstedt. So we had the Czech champion, the former Dutch champion, and the former French champion up front. Foucounet, not as strong as yesterday in the final lap, kind of seemed to flame out. Pieterse really setting the pace, but Zemanova not really wanting to bulge yet. She kept hanging in there, but it wasn't to be for Zemanova. Despite a tremendous ride, Pieterse put in a phenomenal acceleration in front of the VIP tent, stretched the gap further there, shot up the climb. Zemanova still trying to hang in there, but she just couldn't keep up the pace when they went over the pink bridge towards the VIP tent again. And from there was game over. Pieterse with a back-to-back win, really seeming to peak for the World Championships. Today was a really good race by her. Flawless, didn't see a single mistake from her. Okay, it's quite easy to deliver a flawless ride on a circuit like we had here today, but nevertheless, it was a good ride by her. There looked to be some real power on there. What does this mean for the World Championships? Well, we should leave that for the preview in this case, because today that's not a big talking point other than that her form is clearly there. No Alvarado today, no Brandt today. Brandt saying that she has pain in her ankle/calf after yesterday's race. So with that, Pieterse would be expected to be the top favorite, but still, the way she delivered in the final lap is something we haven't seen in a long time from her.
There was really something behind the moves from Pieterse, and she was the only one that was able in the peloton that we somewhat had, that was able to put everyone under pressure, including herself in a sense, because she was hurting, but hurting in a good way. Almost somewhat enjoying it when she was racing up there up front and putting the others under pressure. And yeah, as you said, this has been a while that we have seen her on a course like this as well, where it's fast and it's hard to make a difference. She was really able to put them under pressure on the power sections and, made her own race. And yeah, you can question that Brandt wasn't here, of course, and Alvarado also wasn't. So, the absence of those riders makes it a bit more difficult to put this race in a perspective. But as you said, we should leave that for the preview. Pieterse really rode a very strong race, and at some point I was like, Zemanova was there fighting for a podium, and I was like, respectfully for everyone that is behind her, not today, please, not today, just leave it. And Zemanova took matters into own hand and made sure that it was not going to be for third but second, and that was a hell of a performance. And we have seen that upwards trajectory, and the question will be, in a sense, come Hulst, we might have a fast race. We might. What will that mean?
Hopefully not.
Or not. It's
Hopefully not. Hopefully we have a muddy race.
I'm gonna be honest. I wouldn't mind it being dry. I wouldn't mind. I mean, it would fit perfectly into the season, because I think if you're someone that would.
No, that is true, but there's riders saying to me, I've not even used my mud tires this season. Like,
yeah, that's
what sport are we? Are we a winter sport, or have we gone soft and are we a summer sport? I mean, I get it. Like the weather forecast changes by the hour, and maybe rain, maybe not, maybe some hill, maybe not. But it would fit with the season. But I just want mud. If there's going to be one muddy race, let it be the World Championships, please.
Yeah, it would actually be quite ironic in a sense that you had the whole season where it was quite fast, and you had just a couple of muddy races, and then come World Championships, there it is, the glory of the mud, and it has to be embraced by all the riders. So I see your point, but it's just, I think for some riders, definitely today as well, with the likes of also Backstedt, very strong, and Zemanova, they will be looking at the weather forecast and really hope that it's going to be a dry race, because I think that for them it would not be that beneficial if there is going to be quite some mud, and it's going to be a slower race in a sense. But again, I think what you said, Pieterse today, something that we haven't seen from her in a while. Confirmation, I guess, from what we saw in Maasmechelen. I even rate this performance a little bit higher than Maasmechelen, but it's hard to do that in a sense. And for Foucounet, it was you could see that she was struggling in a sense. She was good, and she got a course that that suits her. But I had more the feeling that when she was leading, that it was more due to trying to get that the pace a little bit down and make sure that it bunches up a
Hmm.
little bit. Because when
Yeah, yeah,
Pieterse
yeah.
was leading, they were struggling. They were really struggling. They were. You could see it on the faces, really.
I mean, during this race, a number of times I thought like, oh, this rider is really cooking, and then I just realized like, if all these riders are cooking, then there must be a buffet at the finish because there's so many riders in the top 10 that really delivered today, that really did well. I mean, Pieterse, for that matter, like, really impressive, really strong physical. Like, I said it before, Pieterse this week, like, don't go outside, don't talk to anybody, don't go to the grocery store, just isolate yourself. Like, DoorDash your groceries, pretend like it's COVID again. Like, don't get sick, please. Like, the last 2 years, there was always this illness either around Benidorm or the week before the World
Yeah.
Championships. Like, don't, like, stay healthy, please, because we know that there's one race that matters for her. That's the one that's next weekend, and her form is clearly building. Will this be enough to be world champion? Well, time will tell in Hulst. In Hulst, she cannot permit herself to make slides on the downhill. She needs to remain smooth. She needs to remain flawless. That much counts for everyone that's racing there that wants to become world champion. But what we are seeing is clearly that the form of Pieterse is on the up, and she's becoming stronger and stronger. And today, like you said, when is the last time we saw Pieterse this strong in cyclocross? Not in the last 2 years due to those illnesses. So that's definitely one point that came to my mind. Like, if she stays healthy, we could be in for a really good battle. About those weather conditions, yes. For Zemanova, a fast course next week will be beneficial. She was really good today. The speed that she has is just good, and it's kind of interesting because on the road she doesn't necessarily stand out, but she's not a cyclocross rider that's purely power. She has relatively good technical, just not in the muddy conditions. And she has improved a lot, and she's improved a lot as a rider, illustrated this year by, for instance, her ninth place in Koksijde and her eighth place in Namur. But today is again phenomenal, like really phenomenal. I don't know if I would be surprised though. But let me explain that before you jump to reactions here, Issam, because today, when the race started, yes, I am somewhat surprised that Kristina Zemanova finishes second here. But if I look at the riders that are not there and replace myself into the shoes of making this podcast 2 seasons ago, when I was on this podcast saying, well, the Belgian teams are a joke for not signing Zemanova, look at her potential, look at her results. Back then, I do think that we said, yeah, Zemanova is a rider who has the potential to reach top 5, top 3 of World Cups. So in that sense, that prophecy has been fulfilled today, but it was still a good like surprise based on everything that happened last year. And even then, like on a fast course this season, she hadn't necessarily shown this yet. But so I guess I'm a bit split here on her, but nevertheless, all I can say is a great ride by her.
There's always the whole. It's the weekend before the World Championships, which means that it means something, but it also doesn't mean anything. I really just hope that this is not the early peak in a sense, and that come Hulls she will still have the legs that she had today, and even better, and could really have a good result there, because the potential was there. It's not, we never really denied that potential. It was just a bumpy road to get here in a sense, and it's almost, I wouldn't say similar, but in a sense it has some similarities with Vash that we saw in Maasmechelen being up there, and it has this kind of similar thing that you saw a rider that has the potential, but it comes out in a way, but it doesn't really, and a bumpy road, things happen, and now it is there. And I think that for Zemanova it was, yeah, you can see that it is a steady line upwards, and you just hope that that steady line will continue come the weekend, and she will continue on with that. And sure, she's in good hands at the moment, so hopefully she can carry that on and continue improving and getting better and better, because I think, if you look at on the men's side, it wasn't, we didn't really see that the excitement that the women's gave me in a sense an hour earlier. That was a fun race, and also the results were fun. They were to look at. They were exciting. It was more of a result that you want to see in a sense a week before the World Championships. While on the men's side, we didn't really see that. We saw some moves left and right, but it wasn't exciting. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't surprising in a sense because, as you said, I think if you would have told me before the race that Zemanova would be second, I would be like, yeah, nice joke. Not because I don't expect it in a sense, but it is just. I would normally say that Foucault would be able to pull that off. Who had a good race, but I felt like Foucault was struggling a little bit. So I enjoyed the race. I enjoyed the progression that she has been making and is making, and hopefully will be making in the future as well. And that will be a great story. Imagine if she was going to be able to pull off a top 5, top 3 at Com Hills. That would be. But it has to be dry. If it's going to be muddy, it's possible. But she then has to have a very good day. A very good day. So that will be interesting.
It will certainly be interesting, and there's a lot of names coming forward. I guess part of it is also not everyone was there today. Some riders opted for the race yesterday, and then you have Alvarado and Brandt obviously not there at the front, and then it really opens possibilities with how the season has been going. Especially, I mean, Van Alphen and Van der Heide both were relatively okay today, but they were aided by a perfect course for them here, and then as well all the stuff that was mentioned before. Some riders not here, some riders tired from training, everything factored into them, like finishing in the top 10 today, but they're still not at their best. And we know for Zemanova that she is. So could it be an early peak? Maybe, but it's also not like she hasn't shown consistency this season. So I'm quite bullish on her. I think she's been doing great, and she could do great next week as well. Foucault, she seemed to be struggling, like you said, but she also went quite deep yesterday after that puncture to still try and win. I think that it's only normal. You can't deliver at the top of your game every single day. So that much for Foucault. Backset, I said it yesterday that the course didn't suit her and she was quite good there. So she could, I think, finish roughly where she finished. This is above my expectation when she was in 3rd place. Then she faded a little bit towards the end, but a good ride by her. And yeah, what can she do next week? Well, something like this maybe. For her, I don't think it's that bad if it's muddy actually, because it would be quite a power slog and she's quite good at that. So Backset did seem quite good today, but I don't know. For me, like I said in yesterday's podcast, not super surprising, because it looked quite good yesterday if you consider that it's one of the worst courses of the year for her in Maasmechelen.
Can only agree, to be honest. I think that was a strong effort, a strong result, but not crazy surprising in a sense. And I was doubting it a little bit, I have to say, because I was not thinking that it was there. Obviously, Maasmechelen was a good result considering the race and the course and how it all played out. And today was again a step up, but considering the circumstances, also not a wow. If she would have won today, that would have been a surprising result, I guess. But can also look forward to the World Championships, and who knows? I think that you're right on that as well, that if it is going to be muddy, that maybe the technical sections will be a little pain, but with the power output that she has, she could normally do quite well. And
let's look at the entire top 10 then. Pieterse, Zemanova, Foucault, Backset, your top 4. Shirin van Anrooy in 5th place. Gladonova 6, Casasola 7, Van der Heide 8, Garibaldi 9 and Ribeirol 10. I think a few things stand out here. First of all, I want to say Sara Casasola was really strong today, but then crashed coming onto the tarmac, which was very unfortunate. I think that she could have done a very nice result, being in that top 5, potentially challenged for the podium. If it wasn't for that, her form, just like yesterday, seems to be quite good. But you need to stay on your bike. And who did that today? Gladonova. Oh, phenomenal ride. She has a very bad call-up. She doesn't have that many points. Cut her way through the field in the first few laps. And really cooking. Like, really going at it. kind of taking the bull by the horns, not being afraid that it's the first time she's in the position, like moving herself into the top 3. Okay, she couldn't stick there, but it was a really good ride. And it's, I guess, again, we saw last year in Benidorm when she got that 10th place that, okay, she immediately has the ability to deliver at the elite level. This year, we hadn't seen it that much yet. There were some quite promising results. Take, for instance, Gavere. This is a relatively okay course. She does best on the more power courses because she doesn't do that much cyclocross at Visma. So I was pleasantly surprised by her today.
I was happy because the environment that she is in and the potential that she has on the road, you kind of need these type of results to make it make sense to go and do cyclocross more, or at least keep continuing doing it. And she has the freedom in a sense to do it with Visma, so that's a good thing. We had to wait a little bit for the better results, and you could see that it was getting better and better. But this was a standout performance and good to see. I had a small smirk, I guess, when you were talking about the crash of Casasola, not because of that crash, but more because of Ribeiro who followed up there. I think, I'm not trying to be funny here, but honestly, I think that Ribeiro had more races where she crashed than where she didn't crash this season.
Probably.
I mean, every time we have a slow-mo in the women's race, or we have or in the first lap, there is something going on with Ribeiro, and it's a bit of a shame because I think this season she actually has had a good season. The form was there.
Yeah.
And it's just with those things she kind of just, I don't know, messes it up. And today again it was because she was thereabout, and then Casasola hits the ground there, and there is only one rider that wasn't able to avoid it, Ribeiro. So yeah, that was just something I noticed, and I had to to comment on that. But it was to come back on Kladonova, it was good to see, really good to see, and is a promising rider. Hopefully, someone that will do keep continuing on cyclocross. Even if it's only going to be this, I think there is still some room for improvement with a bit smaller campaign and program. But today was very good, and very positive.
Yeah, I mean, you say the freedom, she has the negotiated freedom, it's contract bound that until the end of under 23 she's allowed to do cyclocross for Visma, so it's a positive, and let's hope that we can keep seeing her in here. Ribeiro, like you said, still 10th in the end, and not bad at all, but could have been better. And then my final comment here is Rebecca Garibaldi, another really good race by her. We've seen her in top 10, I think, for sure in Sardinia, but I'm thinking at least in a few other televised races, but this might just be the best race of her career, and she's already quite of age, not like as a young rider, she's in her 30s, but really made some progression, and yeah, it kind of surprised me that she pulled this one out of the bag, but again, a good result for the Italians, and we'll come to more results for the Italians because we're going to move to the youth races now, starting with the men under 23 race. First, let's start by saying that the panic is not the right word yet, but this week there will be panic because the Belgian team, juniors under 23, has returned from training camp in Spain sick. One rider apparently arrived at the camp feeling not great or quickly started feeling not so well. And from there on, it went from bad to worse. I mean, Jordi Courses didn't start. A lot of other riders that race didn't perform well due to that. And it's a problem. I mean, Gilles Lejeune didn't start the men junior race for that reason. And with that, like, Lejeune, their top contender in men junior courses, their top contender in the men under 23. De Bruikere also not feeling great today. So it's a bit problematic. But we did see a nice race for the win, and my takeaway here. So this is kind of how the race unfolded. In the first lap, David Haverdings took the lead. We've seen him do that a number of times. Then he sits in the pack. And for once, Stefano Viezzi nailed his start. And he just started ripping it at the front of that group. Sparfell sat in the wheel, but not for too long. Because after 2.5 laps, maybe 3 laps, Parfel started taking the lead. He pushed on, he broke clear, but again couldn't stay away. Vietzi came back, together with Guus van den Einde. And the Haverdings, his race flow is so weird because he dropped to 12th in a big leading group. He was held up behind a crash and then started chasing, cutting into the lead. He came back to the front where Sparvel had still been pulling, but Sparvel rode slightly smarter than in other races because going into the penultimate lap, he stopped pulling, sat in the wheel for an entire lap, let Vietzi do the pulling, and then he launched a missile attack over the barriers. He was jumping so fast, high risk, high reward. He broke clear and soloed the last lap to the win. Haverdings waited around the 180s where the tree used to be. That's when Haverdings took over. He made a little push, came to 3 seconds, but then Sparvel again had the advantage of the barriers, hopped faster and went on to take the win. I still think that Sparvel needs to race smarter to become world champion next week because he was fortunate that Haverdings needed to spend a lot of energy in the chase. But there's no given that Haverdings won't need to do that next week because this is how all the races have been going. Haverdings always comes from the back. He always rides the comeback. He's always racing on the defensive this year. And Sparvel is always on the offensive. And I guess today he got helped out by the fact that Vietzi was an ally for him, also wanting to race on the offensive and not too shabby to take some initiative. So that was then the podium. Vietzi in third, I think, also much needed up for him. He's had so much trouble with his starts, had some back issues as well, and also some condition issues because he's a mud specialist, but his form is there and he has a result to show for that. And Sparvel, hopefully this is some realization that if he just races slightly smarter, he can really pull these races towards him.
I guess it's clicking now for these guys, and yeah, it's gonna be tough to for Sparvel, I guess, to contain himself come Hulst because he's arguably having good form now, and with the race this is gonna be with Hoogerheide, is gonna be a boost for him. Then now you have to contain yourself come the World Championships and try to play it smart. What do you make of Haverdings? You said it was a sort of his race flow was a bit weird in a sense. It didn't really go as natural, maybe is the right word, as it should be. But do you feel that he will be ready come Hulst? Is that something that you, or are you a bit worried that he might come the World Championships maybe have some opposition that will be stronger than we have seen so far this season?
There are riders that can beat him. In the first place, Sparvel. Second place, Vietzi.
Yeah.
Leo Bisio was very strong today, but he got crashed out by Aaron Dox and then needed to run to the pits. And then at the back, he was lapping the same pace as the leaders at the front. But I don't really see it happen for Bisio, unfortunately, in Hulst because his technical skills have just regressed too much. But Haverdings can be beaten. But the thing, and I hope you get to see it all on the TV next week, his race flow is just so intriguing. He's always having a good start in there in the first lap, and then he settles in the middle of the race, and then he starts picking off riders again. And not like, oh, I moved from 6th. No, today he moved from 12th, 13th back to the lead group. In Hoogerheide, he went from 9th back to the front of the race. So it's just a very intriguing style and something that is very easy to go wrong because he executes nearly flawlessly. I hardly ever see him make a technical mistake. So that's how he executes in these races. So for me, those would probably be at this moment the 4 main contenders. And then of course there's the Belgians. Belgians are quite strong but have some issues now with their health. Corsus, De Bruikere, Van den Bergen. I think Mats van den Einde is still a dangerous rider there. For the Dutch, Guus van den Einde, he's quite strong. I think he could medal, but today he had a mechanical when he was in the lead group, or a crash, and he just dropped back. Henry Koet was really strong today. He was held up by Mats van den Einde going down in the second lap, then he moved his way back up and finished 9th. But that's a big group of outsiders for the podium, but it can happen because it has happened this season. It's not a given. It's not a pecking order, and in this category there's always the inconsistencies, but favorite-wise, you would have to come to those names that we just went over.
Yeah, and I think the World Championships will be a different. I expect it at least that Haverdings will not be that reluctant in giving away positions and then picking them up again coming to the end of the
Yeah,
race.
but it's not really reluctant.
Just
It's
his
not
way.
out of ease that he does. It's almost like it's his way that he likes to race from the defense and
Mm.
likes to cut through and go from rider to rider. Because last week in Benidorm it was also not reluctancy. It was just it happened almost the same as today. He came from 14th position in a peloton and made his way back front and just surfed off the wheels and had others close the gaps for him.
That would be interesting because I don't know how with the course like Hulst, I don't know. It's that's gonna be a risky business in a sense, and if you're ending up in someone else's trouble, then you have to close it yourself maybe or whatever, and then that could be troublesome. So that will be interesting. The category overall, how that will play out. The racing will be good, I think. I hope that Sparfell will use his brain somewhat. He does, but just in the sense of not really going at it from the beginning, and or if you do, just gamble and go all out. You know, you cannot. I think that maybe that was something that he did well. Maybe this race that he was able to. Maybe with Vietzi as well, having that support of another rider that also wants to relay a little bit. I think that that was definitely helping out with the riding style that Sparfell has, and it will be interesting to see if it will be enough for the world title. That is going to be interesting, in my opinion, for sure. How those riders will arrive at Hulst and how they will race.
I would say that he raced smarter. He waited longer than in other races to hit like the first attack. Then he broke clear. And when he didn't break clear, he started using his brain. Like he was like, okay, my first attack failed. Now what do I do? Okay, I repack myself. I calm down. I sit in the wheel, and then I go again. So I liked that today. And maybe today still a little bit too active. Like that attack early on, such a big attack for me, not necessarily needed when you're so evenly matched, but okay, we'll see come next week. I get the concern about Haverding's tactics, but I found myself thinking so many times this season, oh, surely it can't go right every time. And so far, I mean, today is second, but that's still relatively good if you consider where he came from. So we'll see. And on the junior women's side, again, no win for Lise Revol. I interviewed her last week. I mentioned that in the Benidorm podcast. She is feeling fatigued from training and that this is all planned. We will see. I don't necessarily see the need to be concerned. The French are typically not at their best yet this weekend. We've seen that the last few years, but it could also be a warning sign. That's always easy afterwards. Afterwards, you'll say, oh yeah, they were peaking, it worked, or they say, they trained too hard and the peak wasn't as well as they hoped. But Revol set off in the first lap, tried to place an attack, quickly came into a leading group of 4 riders. There was also Giorgia Pellizzotti, last weekend's winner, Jeanne Hubert, a Swiss rider, and then there was Barbora Bukowska, the European champion. She was 18th at the start, moved her way through the field really fast, second lap of the race to rejoin that leading group. It was mainly Bukowska and Pellizzotti taking turns setting the pace. They were clearly stronger. They broke clear from the 2 others roughly halfway through the race, 2 out of 4 laps in. In the final lap, Bukowska placed an early attack, but in the second half of the course with the stairs and the downhill and the barriers, Pellizzotti is a more complete cyclocross rider. She was faster on the dismounts, closed the gap there, took the lead, put her under pressure in the downhill and the stairs, and from there went on to win. Bukowska second, Revol losing the sprint to Hubert for third place. She didn't seem too worried after the finish. So that's how that race unfolded, Issam, and Pellizzotti now making 2 wins in a row. I said it last week, it could really be career altering. I could see some signs of more confidence in her riding style today, really that belief in the final lap that she could come back on Bukowska. For Bukowska it was a good ride, but again, that start is just such a problem and she needs to become a more complete cyclocross rider. Like the way that she shoulders the bike isn't good yet. She goes with her arm over the bar, doesn't really have good control over the front wheel there. There's a lot of skills that she can work on, and that's fine at such an age, but it could really hurt her come the bigger events. I mean, last year in Louvain, it was also her start. She took the lead, then celebrated a lap too early, and then lost out. But it's kind of how I'm looking at that. If Bukowska can limit the damage at the start in Hulst, then she's a real contender, like today. If not, then it's going to be a tough ask, like last week.
It's interesting those comments you made about Perizzotti's win in Benidorm. That in Hoogerheide now another win. What is possible? Those are definitely mentally as well. If you're able to pull off a victory and now consecutive victory as well, I think that is must be a mega boost. I hope that it will not. It will not turn into some sort of a negative energy, a pressure, and that can also be the risk in a sense of the success that she has currently. I hope that it can be put in some sort of positive energy where you are, really looking forward to the World Championships and go all in a sense and hope for the best. For Rivol, it's hard to panic, as you said, because we have seen this before and we know we are in what stage we are of the season. It is usual to see riders not really being at their best as of now. The question will be obviously if that is going to be, come Hulst, if it's going to be enough, if the planning did go all right, if the health is there, if the physique is there, and it's going to be in the details also in a sense. So hopefully it will work out for Rivol. And with Bukowska we have seen that trick before in a sense of having bad starts and cutting through the field like it's almost nothing and still getting a decent result out of it. And it's you would think that I think that you're somewhat right that she is still in a category and an age where you can have those issues in a sense, and where you are not when you're not perfect yet, you can still improve in several areas. But I feel that she would have hoped that this season would have been a season in which she would have picked up more on certain things and improved more than she has improved. So it's a bit. I don't know. I was hoping that it would be that the improvements would be there in a sense. It seems like they are not, and we have to wait and see how that will play out for the World Championships, because you kind of already know there are not a lot of things that we are sure about. But I think we're almost sure that Bukowska will not have a good start come Hulst and has to fight her way back lap 1, lap 2, and maybe even lap 3. So I hope that is not going to be the case. I would be very surprised if it is going to be a good start from Bukowska. We have to wait and see. But that is also, if you would have asked me beginning of the season, I would have said Rivol by how much, But now with Pelizzotti now, you don't know. It's gonna be interesting. So that is also, that Benidorm win could be maybe in a season altering. Element.
Then, shortly, the men junior, because it's really getting dark in here and I'm filming myself pointing the flashlight of my phone at my face so you can still see something. The junior men. It was a tame race in a way. We had 4 leaders for almost the entirety of it. 2 Italians, Pezzo and Grigolini. Then we also had Noval Soares and we had Bruyère-Jumar. Grigolini crashed out of the leading group. He tumbled on the second barriers and was game over from there. The 3 others stayed together. Not really many attacks. It looked to be headed towards a sprint, but Bruyère-Jumar had different intentions. He, much like Aubin Sparfel, launched himself over those planks in the final lap, sent the missile, opened a 3-second gap there. Interestingly, that was because, let me say this correctly, he opened a 3 or 4 second gap, coming in their 3rd position, because Noval Soares was running the entire race, and Pezzo started running after he saw Grigolini go down. So they both ran. Jumar from 3rd jumped by them, launched his rocket, still opened the gap over them, and then won. It really meant a lot to him. For him, I think this was an important win, mentally. I don't think he was physically at his best. He was suffering quite hard on that road climb a number of times when they dropped the power. But it meant a lot to him. He's really good, really talented, but this year he's had so much bad luck. Start crash, mechanicals, punctures, and now it finally lands. So I think it means a lot to him to start like that next week. Pieterse second, continues a great streak of form. Noval Soares third, then Grigolini was fifth, and then Lejeune, depending on his fitness. Those are your 5 main contenders for the title next week.
I'll cut it short in a sense. I think that that win of Bruyere was that must have been an important win for him as well, because it was, you know, the Italians were really giving it their all this season so far, and honestly, those two were, with both Pezzarosso and Grigolini, you were looking at those and be like, okay, those are gonna be the protagonists for Hulst, and might even share one too. But it's good to see that there is now sort of a mix up. It is the week before, so we don't know what that will mean eventually come race week in a sense, but yeah, it's good to see that Jumar was in the mix again, winning, and I think that will be a very interesting battle as well, as the men junior race almost always is. It's always exciting in a sense, but it can also be over in the first corner. So definitely a race where you have to tune in from the very first lap. But to be honest, yeah, with all races, but with the men junior races, it's always, I guess, just that little bit more spectacular in a sense.
Good. Thank you so much, Issam.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for being there on site as well and watching those races, and thank you for having me.
We will be back later this week. We will have a big preview for all races at the World Championships. You can expect that to most likely come out on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we will have a stand-up from the course, but that will only be available on our YouTube channel. We will release that on Friday on Spotify in a combined podcast episode with a stand-up from the World Championships mixed relay. And then on Saturday and Sunday, of course, regular podcast coverage for the World Championships. So lots of stuff to come. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back very soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.